Time to rank every NFL roster entering 2025. Welcome, football fans. In this video, I rank every NFL roster from the weakest to the strongest squads in the NFL right before kickoff of the 2025 NFL season. You will not find a video that literally ranks every NFL starter on every NFL team. This isn't just off the top of my head. I have ranked every starter on your favorite team. I have calculated every roster, every starting lineup from the worst to the best, from the weakest to the most stacked. So if that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, show your love for more NFL BLV rankings just like this. And before, guys, we do get started, I want to give a quick shout to my new YouTube channel. I have a second channel entering this season. It's a fantasy football and betting channel. So, if you want fantasy content from yours truly, if you want my best bets, my favorite picks throughout the season, then go subscribe. Or maybe you just enjoy my aura. I don't know. My charisma. Whatever it may be, bro. Go subscribe to Money Mitch. It's my new channel on YouTube. I'd really appreciate it, guys. Let's get started with my roster rankings. Personally, maybe my favorite video that I make every single year. I'm excited to reveal my rankings. And of course, guys, let me know in the comments your opinion, where you agree, where you disagree. All of the math is there in front of you. It's literally there. So let me know where I'm wrong. Let's go. At number 32, the New Orleans Saints have the weakest roster in the NFL. I actually didn't think before this exercise I would rank the Saints as the worst roster, but it correlates to me believing they're the worst team. Now, again, a roster and a team is different. A team can be stronger than a roster. A roster can be weaker than a team. It doesn't exactly mean that you suck if you have a weak roster because coaching, because scheme, because of player fits. Individuals don't make a team. But in this case, the Saints, they are going to be bad. Like, this confirms it. If you didn't know already, they don't have the quarterback. Tyler Shuck won't start, but he will play. It will be Spencer Rattler for Kellen Moore's Saints. And Kellen Moore, in order to make this team good, he's going to have to coach his booty off. Because you look at this team, they have zero, and they might be the only team in the NFL without a single star player or elite player. They don't have one player on their entire team that ranks inside the top 5 at their position, or maybe even the top 10 besides their center, McCoy. So that's pretty severe. They don't have a legitimate top-end wide receiver, top-end pass rusher, top-end cornerback, or top-end quarterback, obviously. They have some good players like Chris Olave, like Demario Davis, who isn't quite as elite as he used to be. He had one of his worst seasons last year in recent memory. Carl Granderson is a good football player, right? Justin Reed was a fantastic pickup, although I still am really questioning why Justin Reed chose the Saints, because I guess he's won enough Super Bowls at this point. He's just cashing in. I understand. But the Saints, I would not want to sign there. I'm excited for their left tackle, their rookie, Kelvin Banks. And overall, I'm excited for both tackles. I like both tackles. Fuaga was a first-round pick in 2024, and Banks being the first-round pick in 2025. I was a fan of both of them coming out of college. So I think they have a solid foundation at tackle, at center. Alvin Kamara is certainly regressing. This could be a fall-off season for him. I'm really a Rashid Shaheed fan. He's extremely explosive. He's got great speed. He's electric. He's just got to stay healthy, man. But the biggest question about the Saints really comes down to, can their quarterback, no matter who it is, get the ball to the playmakers that they do have? Like, they do have some playmakers. And like I said, I like the promise of the young, youthful offensive tackle position and offensive line in general. Even Ruiz is not a bad player. He's not exactly young, but he's a decent player. The defense, though, man, their corner position is booty cheek. And the defensive front is just like mid across the board. There's just like nothing really to get excited about. They're very old in key spots on defense as well. I just think the Saints, not only are they projected to be the team that picks first next year, but they're also probably the weakest roster in the NFL, according to my calculations. At number 31, the Carolina Panthers. Now, I'm not surprised that the Panthers are the second worst roster. Now, I will say that the Panthers could be a team that outperform their talent. And it could come down to the quarterback could be on the rise in Bryce Young. The coach in year 2 could raise the floor and or the ceiling of the offense, depending on how great Teteroa McMillan is as a rookie. He could rise into elite superstar status, and I wouldn't be shocked. Derek Brown coming back to the defense could just overall have a multiplication effect where he makes everyone around him better. That is a big piece here. And unlike the Saints, the difference here with the Panthers is they have actual elite players. I have 2 players that are elite for the Panthers. They don't have a star player, okay? But they do have 2 elites. That's J.C. Horn at corner, who can lock down man-to-man coverage on the outside, Derek Brown at the defensive tackle position. Funny enough, they have the worst defense in the NFL, in my opinion. And the 2 star players, or the 2 elite players, technically, are guys that are on defense, right? Their offensive side of the football doesn't have a single game changer. Like, they've got some really good players. Like, I really like their guards. Lewis and Hunt, I think, are ballers on the football field. Moton has been great for a long time at right tackle. Ekwonu is still, in my opinion, on the rise at left tackle. Hubbard is a good running back, like a good above average runner of the football. He does need to get a bit better as a receiver, but they brought in Rico Dowdle for that purpose, right? Bryce could certainly be on the rise. And I am a huge Jalen Coker fan. I think he could have a huge breakout now that they did trade Adam Thielen. We'll see what Leggett can bring, but I do think this will be a fun football team. I don't think they're going to be particularly great. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I do think they're going to be promising. They're going to be fun. And if the defense can be a little bit better, they can certainly compete in a weak division. Now, my problem with the Panthers roster is they have far too many weaknesses, specifically on defense. They have weak starters at safety, weak starters at nickel, weak starters at linebacker in particular. They don't have a good linebacker position, and they have a really weak edge rush. Like, this is easily the worst starting lineup on defense in the NFL, despite a couple elite players that they do feature. They really need that defensive line, specifically the interior, to pick up the slack with the additions that they've made, because the secondary, outside of 2 guys, really, Morig and Horn, and then the defensive line, it's just like Derek Brown, J.C. Horn reliant. If they lose either guy, like, they're in desperate position. So the Panthers are at number 31, aka the second worst roster in the NFL. The third worst roster in the NFL might be slightly surprising to some because some people are pretty high on this team. That's the Las Vegas Raiders. But I'm not that surprised in my grading that the Raiders are this low, because when I look at the depth chart, I don't see a lot of talent. Now, I do see a couple marquee names that get people really excited. Brock Bowers is a star player, a 10 out of 10, right? Max Crosby is a 10 out of 10. These guys are awesome players. There are rosters that don't have players that are above the Raiders, like this quality or at this quality. Like Crosby and Bowers are two offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year type of talents, right? But beyond that, okay, you've got Ashton Genty, who's an extremely exciting rookie. You have Colton Miller, who's been consistently a very good player. We'll see what happens with Jacoby Myers. He's a good player, though. But overall, there's just a lot of solid guys, particularly on the offensive line and the defensive line. And there's a lot of weakness. There's a lot of, this guy hasn't really been reliable as a starter, or this guy is declining. Examples of that, right? Trey Tucker at wide receiver, or even Thornton as a rookie at wide receiver, for example. DJ Glaze at right tackle. He's been okay at best, but he still has something to prove. They brought in Booker, who they traded for from Philadelphia. We've never really seen him play starting snaps. He's expected to play starting snaps. Guys like Jermaine Pratt, who fell off the face of the planet on Cincinnati's defense last year. Can he play better this year? Right? Eric Stokes, he's been kind of a bust coming from Green Bay. Can he be better? He has talent, but can he be better? Right? There's questions about Darian Porter, another corner that could be starting. And if they don't start him, the depth is kind of concerning. So, yes, I do think the team is better entering 2025 because the key fundamental elements of team are better. Quarterback, head coach, offensive coordinator. These make major differences. Even adding a superstar talent at running back like Ashton Genty, or you're expecting that, right? But the overall roster, I would actually argue, is weaker. The overall talent of the individuals is weaker in 2025, specifically on defense, than in 2024. So we'll see if those talents can mature. Some of these younger guys can really take a step forward. That's what it's going to come down to for the Raiders to be a surprise team. But overall, not in love with this roster, particularly the defense, as the third worst roster in football. At number 29, the fourth worst roster in the NFL is another slight surprise, at least in my opinion, from my perspective. I did not expect to grade the Dolphins this low. But the problem with the Dolphins is they actually don't have any star players anymore. And they're a top-end loaded roster in terms of they pay a lot of money to their wide receiver position. They pay a lot of money to their defensive end position. They pay a lot of money to their expected stars. You can make an argument that Tyreek Hill is still a star, but last year he wasn't, and really off the field he certainly isn't. So it's hard to be reliable with Tyreek Hill. I would expect another up and down season from him. And the thing with those wide receivers that are really quick and really fast and really twitchy is they typically fall fast. So we'll see with Tyreek Hill, but he is their lone elite player in my opinion. Otherwise, the Dolphins have a bunch of ballers, a bunch of very good talents that are rather coming back from injury, or like they're very good, but they're not quite in the elite category. Guys like Jalen Waddle at wide receiver. He's flashed great upside, eliteness in his game, but he hasn't remained consistent. He's often injured. Zach Sealer is one of the most underrated players at his position and in the NFL, but I wouldn't call him a game-changing player. He's very, very good, right? Even Fitzpatrick, who was traded from Jalen Ramsey, or for Jalen Ramsey, I should say, from Pittsburgh. He's a player that's been elite, but is he still elite, right? He hasn't played as well. There's a reason he was traded. I really think Jordan Brooks is one of their more underrated players. I thought he played really well last year in that defense. I think he is very underrated. Chop Robinson could be a star. That's a guy that I would say, look out for him this year. He could be a Pro Bowler. He could be an All-Pro, maybe even at the end of the day. Like, he has extremely rare physical talent, but he's got to play regular starting snaps. Like, he was sort of still a role player last year as a rookie in desperation, where they didn't have Chubb, they didn't have Phillips. Speaking of Chubb and Phillips, what are they post-injury? Especially Chubb, who's getting a little bit older, right? I do think that there's some promising rookies here, particularly Kenneth Grant, who I really like, and he could be a really good run stuffer and nose tackle and beef up that physicality, same as what they brought in that second round at the guard position as well. And there's other promising guys. Melon Fonwu is one to look out for, who I do have listed as a weaker starter, but he's somebody that I liked in his role in Detroit. Like, we don't exactly know if he can be a starter in the NFL. Malik Washington has popped during the preseason. Watch out for him. Patrick Paul is their next left tackle. Is he good? Is he not? Last year, it would say no, but Armstead retired. They're expecting big things out of him. Their tackle positions are terrible. Like, this is the worst tackle group in the NFL at left and right tackle. Like, it's absolutely horrible. I don't know. Who knows what Darren Waller is? I'm not expecting much. He'll probably play half the games at best, to be honest with you. A-Shane's already injured, but of course he has superstar talent at his best. He's another guy that could be elite, but he hasn't exactly proven to be that, right? Like, he's a very good pass catcher, and in space he's very electric, but in terms of breaking contact, making yards after contact, in terms of running in between the tackles, he's a little flawed in that area. So, and Tua, he's a solid starting quarterback. He might be good even, but he's not spectacular. He can't carry the team by himself. I just think this team, from a roster standpoint, on the outside looking in, you would think it would be better. You would think that they're more talented than they are, I think, right? Some very goods when they need those very goods to be elite, to be a good team. So at number 29, the Miami Dolphins. At number 28, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are similarly built to the Dolphins, where they do have quite a few, like, very good players, but they don't have, really that many stars, especially in crucial positions. They have a very good receiver in Calvin Ridley. They have a very good corner in L'Jarius Sneed. They have a very good, offensive line mix when we're talking Skoronski, Zeitler, particularly at the guard position. Safety Amani Hooker, I think, is one of the more underrated at his position. I think he's a very good player. Their elite player is Jeff Simmons. He's no doubt elite. He's the best player on the team by a lot, right? The other guy that could be an elite, and in any given season, Simmons could be a star. Like, he could be like a top 3, top 4, top 5 player at defensive tackle, which maybe, depending on your perspective, could categorize as a star. Like, it depends on your evaluation. But I think he's elite. Like, he's very, 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 very good, like, superstar. But then, like, L'Jarius Sneed could be a star if he gets his head on straight. Cam Ward obviously could be a star. It's just that we don't really know. I'm excited about the rookie receiver as well. That could potentially see some starting time. Tyler Lockett, I'm not inspired by. I think he's absolutely washed, especially what I saw in the preseason. Tony Pollard's a good running back, right? They do have an offensive line that I think is extremely promising. Like J.C. Latham, first-round pick. He could be maybe a very good elite player, right? Skoronski could eventually enter that elite status. Zeitler has flirted with elite status throughout his career. There is a lot of promising elements to the offensive line. And defensively, T'Vondre Sweat, I think, will always kind of remain where he's at, where it's like he's a very good run stuffer. He's excellent in that area, but he's a little bit unrefined as a pass rusher and not well-rounded. So Tennessee, I look at this roster and some underrated gems, some good football players, but just not a lot of superstars. And they really need Cam Ward to be the star that makes everyone else better. They need that guy, right? And I don't know if that will happen right away, but it could eventually happen. So Tennessee, number 28. Number 27, the Jacksonville Jags. Jacksonville has a couple elite players, one on offense, one on defense. You got Josh Hines Allen on defense, and you have Brian Thomas Jr. on offense. I would probably say the only other player that has elite capacity is Travis Hunter. Maybe eventually. Maybe not this year, maybe next year, but I think Travis Hunter could definitely be a top 15, top 10 maybe even wide receiver. I think he's an electric athlete. I think he's a difference maker. I'm not sure how much he'll play on defense, to be honest, and I'm not sure how good he'll be on defense, but I think on offense, he's going to be absolutely phenomenal out of the slot for the Liam Cohen offense. there are a couple really good players on this team, like Aluakon, like Devin Lloyd at linebacker. Both are very good. And then, okay, Trayvon Walker, he feels like he's really close to becoming a Pro Bowl capable player. Like the last couple of years, he's been very good and honestly kind of underrated. He's extremely impactful setting the edge against the run, and he's extremely powerful as a pass rusher, but he kind of just needs to hit that next gear to truly enter the elite status of defensive ends, but he certainly has the capacity. Tyson Campbell is one where I'm like, he's showcased top 10 cornerback ability, but at the same time, he's far too inconsistent to really put him in that category. And then, they don't have too many weaknesses. That's one thing I'll say about Jacksonville. They have a lot of solid starters on the offensive line. They have some younger guys on the offensive line that you're looking forward to. They have Brenton Strange, who's younger. They have even decent running backs, but not spectacular. They have defensive tackle-wise, they're fine. They're not special. Their main weaknesses, they do lie at center. We're trying to figure out if Harrison can truly develop at right tackle, but that's a guy that could be better than a weak starter for sure. He certainly has the pedigree. And then their safety position might be the worst in the league. Like the safety position, they don't have a true, really good player at that spot. They're really counting a lot on their cornerbacks, Campbell, Jerrion Jones, and then Jordan Lewis, who I think do boost the secondary. But I think that this is a team they really need coaching to make this team an elevated team. They need Liam Cohen to fix Trevor Lawrence. They need Liam Cohen to have this offense buzzing. And they just need to be a respectable level of defense, which overall I think they have the talent to be. It's just that they haven't performed at that level. So at number 27, Jacksonville. Number 26, Cleveland. Now this is an example of a team that I think is more talented than really what they will be as a team. I think they're a better roster than they are as a team, okay? Maybe by just a couple spots. But overall, Cleveland does have some elite superstar players. Myles Garrett. I mean, is there a better defensive player in the NFL than Myles Garrett? Is there a better man-to-man corner in the NFL than Denzel Ward? Those guys are absolute stars. There's no doubt about it. Jerry Jeudy proved to be a very good football player last year. He is a lower-end number one wide receiver. David Njoku is a top 12, top 10 talent at tight end. Teller and Bitonio can still play on the offensive line. Even Pocic isn't bad on the offensive line. Their tackle position is pretty desperate, especially when, not if, but when Conklin goes down, because he always does. They obviously lost something with Martin Emerson going down. That hurts their cornerback depth chart. They do have a little bit of a weaker edge depth chart entering the year than they typically do. They typically have a better Robin to the Batman of Myles Garrett. Their running back position is one of the worst, in my opinion, in football. Their quarterback position is one of the worst, in my opinion, in football. Joe Flacco starting the season. I actually expect Dylan Gabriel to get in at some point, but Joe Flacco to start the season. Love Joe Flacco. At one time, elite, but at this time, not exactly ideal, right? And the depth of the receiver position, the depth of the corner position could use work. Losing JOK at linebacker is certainly a concern. I think their defensive tackle position could be an upside position for them for sure. I really like the potential of Graham. I like Malik Collins as a pass rusher. I like Shelby Harris as good quality depth. Schlesinger could be a nice pick at linebacker. He could develop into a very good linebacker, but you're expecting a lot from two rookies to be main heavy contributors on defense. So it's just a team that lacks like a big time quarterback or any sort of quarterback whatsoever. It's a team that lacks at the tackle positions, in the backfield. And really overall, just they have a couple weaknesses that bother me on defense, or else it would be a very, very good defense. So at number 26, the Cleveland Browns. At number 25, the New York Giants. The G-Men have certainly improved their roster this offseason. There's no question about it. I think last year they had one of the worst rosters in football, but this year I think there's a lot to like. Dexter Lawrence is their star player, and you could make an argument that Malik Neighbors is also a star, but I just kind of need to see like maybe one more year of the stardom take effect, and I think he could honestly be a top 5 receiver in football. Malik Neighbors could have a year where he's the best receiver in the league. I would go that far. Like, I think Malik Neighbors, depending on Jackson Dart's development and his quarterback position and the reliability of that, Neighbors could become the best receiver in football for a time. I'm not saying like overall, but he could be better than Jefferson or be better than Chase in a given season, and I wouldn't be surprised. But he's elite for now, okay? Andrew Thomas is pretty securely an elite left tackle in the NFL. He is coming back from injury. Brian Burns is an elite defensive end, in my opinion. Now, the interesting one here with the Giants is they could rank even higher depending on how good Abdul Carter is. Because he's a rookie, I put all rookies in the same category. And with my rookie category, I middle the greatness with the potential downside of each rookie, and I give it a 4, right? So based on the grade, Carter is probably going to be an 8, right? He at the very least is going to be a 6, in my opinion, right? A baller, a very good player, or an elite player, right? He could be a 10 at the end of the day. I actually think if I had to guess, Abdul Carter will be a 10. Like, I think he'll be a top 5, top 10 edge rusher in football. I think he's going to be that good, right? But for now, he's just a rookie, and I've never seen him play for an NFL season, so I can't exactly give you those points, right? But I think, two of the main contributions of making the Giants a better roster is the 2 signings they made in free agency. They had a very effective offseason just based on looking at their depth chart, right? Like, Adebo and Holland both give them 2 6s, like 2 very good players. Those are really good products of free agency. Like, you're not going to find that quality of player too often, especially a guy like Holland, who's in his prime as an athlete and as a player, and he could be, getting back to being a truly elite free safety in the NFL this year. Paulson Adebo, also not too old, like, has flirted with really good levels of play. And then there's some younger guys like Phillips at the nickel corner position that I think's underrated. Tyrone Tracy, who could take a huge leap at running back this year. Newbin at safety is a similar one. But they also do have quite a few weaknesses across their roster. They have multiple weak starters on the offensive line. They have weaknesses at corner, CB2 in particular, whether it be Banks or Flott. They have weaknesses maybe at the depth of their linebacker position. I'm not sure if I'm sold on Johnson as their tight end, but we'll see. So the Giants, they have definitely improved. They have definitely gotten better, specifically on defense. And if Abdul Carter is a superstar, it makes their front 7 absolutely ridiculously stacked. And I think this is actually a pretty solid ranking for them. Like, last year, they probably moved up 3 or 4 spots. I don't remember where I ranked them, but they definitely moved up this list. And they could actually be underrated depending on some of the development of some of their guys that they drafted last year and this year. So at number 25, the Giants. At number 24, the Washington Commanders. The Commanders are going to be one of the surprise teams because they're a much better team than they are a roster. Because they have very good coaching, Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury, who I think elevate both the defense and the offense from the individual talents, right? This does not much take into effect coaching because roster is not about coaching. It's more about the GM. How did they build this team? Like, obviously, talent and the individual evaluation of a player is also dependent on how they fit in a scheme. So there is some sort of coaching element that is infused in these rankings. But in my opinion, I try to strip that away as much as humanly possible, right? I try to. At the same time, they also are elite or like close to elite at quarterback. Jaden Daniels, I give an elite grade. I don't quite give him a star grade. I only gave 4 quarterbacks a star grade. Jaden Daniels would be my 5th quarterback, so he would be the closest to being in that star category. But we need to see a little bit more than one season to give you the Joe Burrow, to give you the Patrick Mahomes type of treatment, right? I do think Frankie Louvu is an elite linebacker because, and I only gave 4 linebackers a star or an elite grade. So Louvu is up at the upper echelon, right? Linebacker is one of those positions that I fit a lot of players into the baller category, including Bobby Wagner, because I just don't know how many elite linebackers there truly are in the NFL. But Louvu's ability to be effective as a pass rusher and a run defender and be able to play multiple positions is why I gave him an elite grade. Terry McLaurin is a true alpha number 1 wide receiver. Not quite like top 10 quality, so I didn't put him as a star, but, or like more so even top 5, top 6 quality. I think I only gave like 5 or 6 receivers the star treatment, so like truly elite players, but McLaurin is extremely consistent, and he's like very reliably the like 7th through 15th to 20th best receiver in the NFL, no matter the situation, the offense, the offensive coordinator, the quarterback. So he's very elite. I would say Laramie Tunsil was their biggest addition of the offseason. He's an elite pass blocker and an elite left tackle. The thing that holds him back from being a star is his, sometimes I would say like he's not as good of a run blocker, but I would also say that he's just the penalties, like he's just not as good as like, let's say, Tristan Wirfs, okay? He's not quite in that category, but he's excellent, and he certainly improves this offensive line. I'm excited for Trey Amos, the rookie, to get the start. I think he could be a very good corner at one point in his career, but we have to see. Deron Payne is a bit of an X factor. He's a guy that at times has played at a very good to elite level at that position, but he's also extremely inconsistent. Deebo Samuel is an X factor on offense. We've seen Deebo become, he was a star or an elite player at one point, like a true game-changing player in his prime. I just don't think he's anywhere close to that any longer. I still give him the good grade, which would list him, anywhere around the 35th to like 45th best receiver in the NFL. So that's still pretty good, but like that's a good number 2 receiver overall. But to me, that's not an elite guy. That's not a guy that's a number 1 anymore. And honestly, that's being kind to what he's given in the past. Like, I'm not so sure he still is that guy. I think he might be for stretches. Marshawn Lattimore is a guy that I really struggled with. Do I put him in good? Do I put him in solid? Like, do I put him in baller? Like, I really struggled with Marshawn Lattimore because I think he's all over the map in terms of the evaluation of that player. Because I thought last year he played really poorly, but in the past he's played really, really well. But I feel like he's wearing down because of injuries. I feel like he is unreliable due to injuries. I'm a fan of Dorrance Armstrong. I think Von Miller gives them some promise to their pass rush. I think Quan Martin, as a player that I graded as a weak, could be a good eventually. Overall, though, I just think this is a roster that isn't as good as the team. I think the offensive line as a collective is kind of underrated. They play better than the individual parts, I would say, right? They don't have a great tight end. They don't have a great running back, but they fit for what they do, right? Hopefully Deebo is the same thing at wide receiver. The defense, they don't have a superstar pass rusher. They don't have a superstar on the defensive line, right? That hurts. They don't have a superstar corner. They don't have a superstar safety. They don't have anybody. But as a collective, for what they're asked to do, they perform, they play well. I think this is also an indication, though, that they are a bit overrated entering 2025. So at number 24, the Commanders. At number 23, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks were a unit that I actually thought would rank higher. And I'm surprised they don't rank higher, to be honest with you. They didn't have a star player, so that certainly hurt. They didn't have a star player, okay? Leonard Williams was pretty close. I will say that. Leonard Williams, I think I had him as my 4th best defensive tackle last year, but overall, or my 5th maybe, he was in the top 5. But overall, from season to season, Leonard Williams was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate last year. You would probably grade that as a star player, right? But overall, like, he's more of a closer to the end of the top 10 for his career than he is for the top 5. So that was just kind of like a decision I had to make. Like, is he a star or is he like elite? I'd say he's elite. I think that's fair. Witherspoon, I think he's a very good corner, and I didn't put him in my top 10, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was just outside my top 10. But I think he's elite because of his versatility. I think he also still has untapped potential. And I think year 2 in this defense, he might be even better. He might rise to the level of, this is the type of talent, the all-around impact leader that could be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate with the amount of plays he can make, with the tackling ability, with the coverage ability. So he could be a superstar. Like, he could be a star. But overall, they don't have one. JSN, excellent receiver, but not quite a star. Kenneth Walker could be a star if he stays healthy, right, and get some blocking. He certainly could enter the top 5 running backs in football in a given year. He could be the best pure rusher in a given season. He could be the next Nick Chubb-esque running back, right? I wouldn't be surprised by that whatsoever. He's extremely quick. His jump cuts are incredible. His contact balance is insane. I mean, he's one of the best tackle breakers there is. Cross is still on the rise. Ernest Jones was a great addition last year. Reek Woolen is a very good cornerback. Julian Love's a very good safety, right? Very good elements to this team. Their rookie class seems very promising. Zabel on the offensive line, Eamon Worry in the secondary, Horton even at receiver who could get the start now that they released MVS. Exciting for Horton to be that deep threat, that speed threat. Looking forward to that. Byron Murphy, who I only graded as good, could also become an elite player as he was expected to be that coming out of the draft. He just has not shown enough so far, so I could not put him too high. But there's a lot of solid across the starting lineup, including DeMarcus Lawrence, Boye Mafe, even Sam Darnold at quarterback, I think is solid enough to get it done, to get the job done. We'll see what Cooper Kupp is. Cooper Kupp, you could have graded as a good receiver. I just put him in the solid, okay? Like Kobe Bryant, he's actually very underrated, but they do have weaknesses that you wouldn't really expect. Like right tackle, I think is a pretty big weakness. Some people see Lucas differently than I do. I think he's one of the weaker elements of their offensive line in recent seasons, but he's also been injured quite a bit, so that's had effect in his game. They don't have a good tight end. They have multiple serviceable guys if Arroyo can really become something, but I'm not expecting that right away, okay? But Barner is expected to be their primary starter. He hasn't shown much throughout his career. Their center, he's got potential, but hasn't shown much throughout his career so far. Knight is another one, like younger guy, kind of unproven. Bradford might be their overall worst starter. If I had to say one guy is their worst player in their starting lineup, it's probably Bradford. But overall, Seattle is an example of a team that I think will be better than their roster as individuals because there's just a lot of good to solid players here, or even very good players here, but they don't have quite enough elites to kind of put them over the top, perhaps. Maybe that's why we view them as like a wild card type of team. That could be the reason. At number 22, none other than the New England Patriots. Honestly, this feels low for the Patriots. I'm not going to lie, because this is one of the most improved rosters in the NFL. And maybe a key element for why they are so low is that the Patriots don't have many, if any, truly elite superstar players. The only player that actually is graded above an 8 is Christian Gonzalez. 8 or above is Christian Gonzalez as a star corner. I have him as a top 4 corner pretty securely. 3 or 4 feels about right. And at any point, a potential defensive player of the year candidate. But other than Christian Gonzalez, there isn't a star player. There isn't a star left tackle yet, maybe Will Campbell. There isn't a star quarterback yet, maybe Drake May. There isn't a star running back yet, maybe Travion Henderson. There certainly isn't a star receiver, and I'm not going to pretend that there is ever going to be one on this team. There isn't a star tight end. There isn't a star pass rusher. I think you get the point. There are some very good players, especially on defense. They have a plethora of good defenders. Jabril Peppers at safety, Robert Spillane at linebacker, Christian Barmore and Milton Williams at defensive tackle, and even Harold Landry at edge. And a number of these guys were signed. Carlton Davis signed to the team, right? These guys were all signed to the team. So it's a greatly improved roster. They added, out of their top 10 best players, they might have added this season like 6 or 7. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Other than Drake May and Christian Gonzalez and Christian Barmore, who really didn't even play last year, the rest of their best players are rather going to be rookies, or they're going to be guys that were on other teams that they signed. Most likely, like Stephon Diggs is another example, right? So, yeah, this team is greatly improved. I also expect the coaching to get more out of some of the players that weren't performing to their level of ability. Maybe like Ramondre Stevenson or Mike Onwenu. Players like that, Demario Douglas, who I've always liked and admired. I think he's going to develop this year into a good player. Maybe a Marcus Jones. Guys that have talent, but it just feels like they haven't exactly been living up to their true potential. But the Patriots overall, the thing I like about my team's roster is they truly don't have a lot of weaknesses. Like some people from the outside looking in would say, they're weak on the offensive line. Well, they have 4 new starters out of 5. And I would categorize only one of those players as a weak starter. And that would be Garrett Bradbury, a former first-round pick of the Minnesota Vikings, who's their center. Jared Wilson is a rookie, mid-round pick, but he was the best prospect at his position in the draft. So he could be really good. A guy that starts right away as a rookie that has that much pure talent probably is going to be good more often than not, right? Morgan Moses is reliable. Like the offensive line, not bad. Receiver position is the other position where they have more of a weakness. But that being said, Kayshon Boutte has flashed. And also, Kyle Williams has a lot of potential. And even Matt Collins made some plays in the AFC Championship. So it's not like they're absolutely terrible at receiver the way they've been in years past, with Douglas and Diggs giving them a solid floor at 1 and 2, in my opinion. Hunter Henry giving them a quality tight end. Like, this team really doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. Really. And they have a lot of good, a lot of solid. And that's the way the Patriots have always been built. Right? Even in their dynasty years, maybe they had like 4 to 5 truly elite players. In the earlier dynasty, you could maybe argue they had a bunch of them, but in the later dynasty, it was really Brady and Gronk. And outside of that, you could maybe make an argument for a Hightower every once in a while or a McCourty every once in a while. But it wasn't like there was a ton of guys that were truly top 3, top 5 at their position. So the Patriots have always been about that core of good and not a lot of weakness. And that's been their true fundamental roster building strategy, even now in a Mike Vrabel regime. So looking forward to seeing these Patriots. I think for the first time in a while, there are a bunch of young players that could truly actually, in my heart, become really, really good football players. And that's really exciting. At number 21, the New York Jets. This is one of the more shocking evaluations that I made in this entire video. Now, I have said throughout the offseason that the Jets are not going to be bad because they have a bad roster. I have never said that. But they do have bad in the critical areas, in my opinion, or at least new and unknown. Quarterback. They might have the worst starter in the league outside of maybe New Orleans. Justin Fields is not good. I'm sorry. You can't convince me he's good. You'll never convince me he's good. Aaron Glenn, I'm not a fan of. Although some people are. And they're relatively unproven at coach in general. Offensive coordinator included. They do have major weaknesses at receiver. They do have some weaknesses in the secondary. But they do have some really awesome football players. Like Sauce Gardner, star player. Quinnen Williams at his best, star player, at the very least elite. Garrett Wilson could still be a star. The problem with Garrett Wilson, he's never had a good quarterback, and I'd include Aaron Rodgers in that mix. Right? Garrett Wilson is as close to becoming a star at receiver as you possibly can get without being it, if that makes sense. He is one of the best at avoiding tacklers, right? He's really good at making people miss in space. That's an elite trait. That's a superstar trait. But he hasn't quite crossed the line in becoming a upper echelon, truly incredible talent at that position. And then they've got a bunch of very good players. Like Quincy Williams is very close to being an elite linebacker. He was actually the closest. I almost put him in that category. So if anything, the Jets could be higher on this list, which is crazy. Sherwood had a breakout season last year. Will McDonald had a breakout season last year. Elijah Vera Tucker, if he just stays healthy, could truly enter elite status as a guard. Membu has potential to be elite at tackle. So does Fashanu at left tackle. They've got a lot of promise here. Tippmann at center has promise. Their running back position, one or the other, it feels like they'll be good at that position, whether it be Hall or whether it be Allen. Johnson has flashed really good Pro Bowl type potential at defensive end before. But again, it's like their receiving core stinks outside of Garrett Wilson. They have a rookie tight end. They have a lot of youth on the offensive line. They have an unproven head coach. They have a bad quarterback. And they do have some weakness in the secondary that they haven't had in the past. But this is the leftover roster of a roster that was expected to be a contender last year, right? Like that's what we have to think of it as. Like this was a team that people were talking about as a top 10, top 5 roster last year with Aaron Rodgers. They've lost a couple pieces, but really it's very much the same. The evaluation, some of them have peaked, some of them have dipped, but still it's a quality enough roster. It's just that they don't have a quarterback. We're not sure about the coach. We're not sure about the receiving core, and that's why they're at 21. At number 20, the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys have some players that are very good and have even flashed greatness, but have been inconsistent. They have an upper echelon duo, one on offense, one on defense, that is as good as any team in the league. CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, that's as good as it gets. Like at non-quarterback positions, CeeDee Lamb, top 5 at his position, maybe top 3. Micah Parsons, same thing, right? Offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, best receiver in the league, best pass rusher in the league, type of quality in those individuals. Gravitational pull players that you have to game plan for on either side of the ball. That makes people better, right? The offensive line is really the area where I think they have gotten a lot worse over the last couple of years, right? Tyron Smith leaving, and then now Zach Martin retiring, right? All that sort of stuff. It's dwindled, the offensive line that used to be impactful, an upper echelon unit. They still have Tyler Smith, who's an elite guard, in my opinion, could probably even play tackle at a pretty high level if they want him to. Guyton is one that needs to develop, and they do have a couple of these guys that were first-round picks that they need to play well, like Mozzie Smith, Guyton. That could be 2 misses in the first round if they don't play better, okay? And Guyton is dealing with a little bit of an injury to start the year. I'll also say that for whatever reason, they don't care about running back, so this is one of the weakest running back rooms in football. Unless Jaden Blue becomes a superstar out of nowhere, he has the talent, but I'm not expecting Javonte Williams to be that, okay? I'm not. Some players, though, like one of the interesting ones is Overshown at linebacker. He, to me, is a very good linebacker already and has the capacity and the potential to be elite. But he's going to be playing like half the year. He's not going to be playing at the beginning of the year. So I could have moved or docked Dallas down just for that alone, but I wanted to have him on the list, have him within the depth chart, because he's going to be starting at one point during the year, and I wanted to reflect the overall roster. So that's one where it depends on your perspective, right? If you want to include him or not. Bland and Diggs are 2 interesting guys at corner where both have superstar potential, both are incredible ball hawks and playmakers, but both are somewhat inconsistent. Diggs also with the injury concerns. I do like the Dante Fowler pickup, might have been their best pickup of the offseason. Tyler Booker trying to replace the legacy of Zach Martin at guard. That's going to be difficult, right? Ferguson, I think, is a good tight end that I honestly think is underrated. I think he's a good possession player. I think that he is really good after the catch. I think he's got great rapport with Dak Prescott. Really looking forward to the addition of George Pickens. I mean, George Pickens, I know I said Dante Fowler might have been the best pickup, maybe the most underrated, but George Pickens most impactful. I think George Pickens, this might be bold, but as a number 2 receiver, I think he's going to have the best year of his career, including the years where he was a number 1 in Pittsburgh. He's got the best quarterback. He's in the most pass-happy offense, and he doesn't have to take on any sort of coverage in terms of like CeeDee Lamb's drawing the double. CeeDee Lamb's drawing the attention. George Pickens could really benefit from that, and Dak Prescott could really thrive having a big-time perimeter target like Pickens who's as athletic as him. If he can keep his head on straight, this guy has superb talent. So very good player, right? One of the best number 2s in football. I like the safety combination as well. They are a bit weak, in certain areas like defensive tackle, linebacker, nickel corner is a weakness. And the offensive line overall isn't as good as it used to be. But I do feel like Dallas has superstars. Dallas has very good players that are capable of being superstars, but they do have quite a few weaknesses that they maybe in a years past, couple years ago, they maybe didn't have as much of the clear identifiable weaknesses. In particular, the running game on offense and the running game on defense. So at number 20, the Cowboys. At number 19, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are at number 19, a very solid to good roster. There's nothing to me that says this is an upper echelon roster, but at the same time, they're like sneaky solid, if that makes sense, right? And that's why they're just inside that top 20. They have one star player in Trey McBride, who is top 3 at tight end, George Kittle, Brock Bowers. He's awesome. 100 catches a season, I think, in his prime is very, very, very capable for him. And I think that will happen again this year. He's the number 1 receiver on the team, no matter how much people want to sell me on Marvin Harrison Jr. Budda Baker is close to being a star player, and I guess debatably is a star player. But to me, he's like the 5th to 7th best safety and not, or like in that range, right? Not quite the top 3, top 4. So that's a debatable one, but he's securely an elite player year in, year out. Absolute, just crazy madman defender out there, just makes plays across the football field. They have a number of younger guys that if they develop in the right direction could potentially be elite, right? Like Paris Johnson at left tackle, Marvin Harrison at wide receiver. Marvin Harrison was my wide receiver 33. Like he was the guy that I left out of my top 32, like the honorable mention. So that's where he ranks for me for now. Garrett Williams is another one of those guys at nickel corner that's younger, that's really, really developed into something nice for them. But can he be truly elite? We will see. Then they signed a couple of guys that I really like. Josh Sweat is an awesome pass rusher. Calais Campbell returns to Arizona. He was incredible last year. Like, he's still a very good player. He was one of the best run defenders in the entire NFL last year. So he deserves that spot. James Conner, most underrated running back in the NFL, period. Catches the ball, runs the ball, powerful. Like, he is the engine of the offense. Kyler is the X factor, of course. He has elite capabilities, but he is elite in terms of inconsistency as well, which is why he's only good. I think Froholt's one of the more underrated players. I like the addition of Tomlinson. Thompson is, very consistent. They do have some weaknesses, I feel like, at linebacker, corner, and receiver. The depth at receiver, the depth at corner is a tad concerning. Max Melton, we'll see if he can develop as a second-round pick. Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch and/or Zay Jones just not getting it done for me as number 2, number 3 wide receivers in the NFL. But it is more of a McBride, Harrison. I just wish they added a bit more sexiness, speed to that position than they have. And linebacker is just a position they don't choose to spend on, and that's, I think, with intention. So, yeah, the Cardinals are a bit underrated as a roster. Will Johnson, a guy that I haven't really mentioned. Will Johnson, and Walter Nolan's not on here because he's not a starter, and he's also injured. But those are 2 guys as well from this draft class that could be ballers, could be elite players. I especially think Will Johnson could be a top 10 corner at some point in the NFL. I wouldn't be surprised by that. Top 20 maybe would make more sense. Top 10's asking for a lot, but he could be that. He could be a top 32 corner by the end of the year, which would definitely boost the secondary. So at number 19, I have the Cardinals. Sneaky unit. Next, 18, the Chargers. The Chargers, honestly, were a team that I was concerned about entering this video because I didn't know where they were going to rank. I didn't know if they were going to rank too low and almost make this exercise not worth it. I'm always a little concerned about that, but I'm glad that the math still reflects sort of what I think of the roster. I think they are a better team than they are a roster because I think Harbaugh is an absolute motivator. He is one of those voodoo magic specialists in terms of his just pure energy. Justin Herbert really carries a lot of the offense, and then they're very well coached on defense. I think they have the best young defensive coordinator in Minter in the sport. So a lot of this comes down to the main ingredients of the Chargers are very strong, but the overall roster has concerns. and I don't think it's as good as people would think, right? They have one star player, Derwin James, who to me is a top 25 NFL player. He is the second best safety, in my opinion, in the NFL, and one of the biggest X factors defensively in the NFL because he's so versatile in his impact. Khalil Mack isn't a star any longer, but in any given game, he can take over as if he were a top 5 edge rusher. It's just that he's more of a top 15 at this point. Justin Herbert is securely and safely a top 10 quarterback. If you don't have him in the top 10, you're delusional and or you don't watch football that much. But yeah, he hasn't won a playoff game. That's why he's not a star, right? He's elite, which only I think I put 3, maybe 4 elites. I had 4 in the star, and then I had Daniels, Herbert, Stafford, and maybe one more in the elite category, if I'm not mistaken. We'll see throughout the video, but Herbert is certainly right there, as at any given season, he could be that 5th best quarterback in football, in my opinion. Definitely a guy that elevates, and he was the best in interception percentage last year, so he did a great job of protecting the football in this new scheme under Greg Roman. Vlad McConkey could become an elite receiver. I'm more so thinking that he'll flirt between 15 and 25 for the majority of his career, but that's still really good for a second-round pick. I'm not going to deny that. Joe Alt is definitely a guy that could be elite or a star at left tackle or right tackle. A big loss for them, and the reason they're not like a couple spots higher is they lost Rashawn Slater. Rashawn Slater would be an elite player. So they lost 6 points, basically going from Rashawn Slater to Trey Pipkins. That, I think, is a tangible thing when we're talking about preseason injuries, and a reason to move a team out of a playoff spot is going from 6 points from elite as an 8 to weak or a bum as a 2. That's a big deal because that impacts the entire offense. It impacts Herbert's timing. It impacts the receiver's ability to get open. It impacts the overall offensive line being a top 10 unit to not being a top 10 unit, right? Like that's a huge reflection of where the team is now at. Henley, I think, is like the most underrated young linebacker in the NFL. I think he'll be top 10 sooner rather than later, and he could be elite at any given moment. I think he's going to be very, very good. Excited for Hampton out of the backfield. He could eventually be a top 20, top 15 running back. He could be that as a rookie, and I wouldn't be that surprised. I'm not as high on him as some other people, but I do think he is very well-rounded, powerful, fast, and he'll get a ton of work. So looking forward to seeing him in the offense. Can one of these young receivers click? Can Keenan Allen bring them something, still bring them that quality, that chain mover, that consistent zone beater? But they have a lot of good players, like Thule off the edge. Elijah Molden's underrated. A couple young corners like Still and Hart who are on the rise. Denzel Perryman played well last year for them. Mekhi Becton was a dog in Philly. Can he really unlock that running game for Hampton? So the Chargers have a couple concerns in their front on both sides of the ball. Defensive tackle isn't their strongest position, right? The offensive line now with Pipkins and even a weaker center position with Bozeman is a bit of a concern. That was really where they were taken advantage of by the Texans. And then, tight end, they don't have an electric tight end, Tyler Conklin. They still don't have greatness across the roster, but they have enough to be flirting with the playoffs, considering they have very good coaching, they have a very good quarterback, they have enough in terms of an edge rusher, a receiver, Derwin James in the secondary. They have enough in the key areas of their team, Joe Alt at left tackle, to really be extremely competitive and a very good team. It's just that a lot of the other elements of their roster are just like blah, meh. Like, they're just fine. So at number 18, the Chargers. Number 17, the Cincinnati Bengals. So I have the Bengals at 17, and this is a reflection of a team that has multiple star players that maybe is a little bit weaker on the lower end of their starting depth chart, but they're very, very good in the high end of their starting depth chart. Joe Burrow, obviously star quarterback, could at any given season be the MVP and or the best quarterback in football. Jamar Chase, the best receiver in the NFL, in my opinion, entering 2025 after a triple crown in 2024. Trey Hendrickson, the NFL's leading sacker. So they have literally, at arguably the 3 most important positions in the NFL, they have 3 of the best players at their positions, which is crazy. Like, that's pretty big time. Not only that, but they probably have the best number 2 receiver in the NFL in T. Higgins, who I have as their lone elite player. As their lone baller player, Logan Wilson at linebacker has proven to be very good. Last year, he was a good element of this defense when healthy, despite the lacklusterness around him. Can he remain at that level? Because there are a little bit of concerns there. They do have multiple rookies that can make big-time impacts. Fairchild on the offensive line and Shamar Stewart big-time on the defensive line. Can he really be the complement that we're searching for Trey Hendrickson? Edge run stuffer, powerful, inside, outside versatility on the defensive front, freak show. Can he be that? Can the O-line just get closer to solid than bad, right? I think that individually they have some talent. Mims is a first-round pick. Orlando Brown is a highly paid left tackle, capable of good things. Ted Karras, very solid center, right? Can their guards just give them enough, right? Can they give them enough here? And the defensive line, I think that throughout his career, BJ Hill's been underrated. I think TJ Slayton was a really underrated pickup, but he's more of a run defender than a pass rusher. He's just like a solid starter, nothing special, but for what they need, he could be a really good infusion to the defense as a top-end run stuffer in the NFL at his position. Chase Brown, looking forward to maybe a breakout from him into the next category, going from good to potentially very good. And then DJ Turner, Dax Hill, some players on defense that could also have breakout seasons as well at especially the secondary level. So the Bengals, I really like the combination of superstars with the potential of some of the youthful elements of the roster where they could break out. And if things roll the right way for them, they could really be as good as they were in 2022, 2021, where if some of these players do hit, Mims, Turner, Hill, Stewart, now we're talking about a potential contender in the NFL, in the AFC. Because not only did they have some talented players, but as a team, you put together an elite quarterback, an elite pass rusher, an elite receiving core. With a coach that's proven to win in the playoffs before, you have something special. So the Bengals are a 17 roster that could be a top 5 team at the end of the day. At number 16, the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, surprisingly, graded rather low in comparison to where I thought they would land. But I think this is an example of a team that has a lot of really, really good elements, but they're condensed. They're saturated in certain areas, right? Stafford and the passing game, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, those are their elite offensive players. Otherwise, they have some very good offensive linemen. Kevin Dotson, Rob Havenstein has been good for a long, long time. But, tight end is meh. Running back is fine. Like, they're just good to solid everywhere else. But it's really the receiving core, Stafford, and McVay that make the offense cook and hum. Defensively, all their talent is condensed and saturated in the defensive front, specifically the D-line, specifically the interior D-line, right? Like, Jared Verse is incredible at edge, but then 3 of their top 10 players might all be defensive tackles. And one of them isn't on the list because I only included starters, right? Poona Ford comes out in sub packages, so it's Braden Fisk and it's Kobe Turner, who are both definitely top 30 at their positions, right? Turner closer to top 10. So, yeah, those are their best players. And the rest of the roster is the secondary is kind of underwhelming. The safeties are solid starters, but I don't think anybody is going crazy about the secondary. Akilla Witherspoon off the scraps last year played incredible. Darius Williams is older than dirt as their number 2 corner. Quentin Lake is kind of underrated. He's a good nickel corner, but I wouldn't say he's incredible. He's not Trent McDuffie. He's not Cooper DeJean. He's good, right? And Cameron Curl, he's fine. The linebackers, they're serviceable, but nothing special. Spites, maybe somebody that could spark this year. Young, is underrated as a number 2 D end, but he's more of a complementary force to the rest of what they have on the defensive front. So I think the Rams, on the surface, a team that could be a Super Bowl contender. On the surface, a team that could be an NFC contender because they have the right elements. They have a really good quarterback with a really good coach, elite quarterback, right? And they have a good offensive line, and they have a very good defensive line. And when you combine those elements, that is a contending team, even if they do have weaknesses in the secondary elements, tight end, running back, corner, linebacker, right? So they've built their team at the nucleus very strong. That's why they, in this evaluation, are only a middling unit at number 16. At number 15, the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are, I think, kind of underrated, and honestly, they would have been like top 12 if not for the injury to Caleb McGarry. They went from basically a 3 to 4 point dock moving down, and that kind of comes down to these are how close these teams are from about 15 through 11. They're very, very close and pretty subjective. But Atlanta does have elite players, stars. They have 3 stars. That's as many as the Bengals. They have Bijan Robinson, who's a top 4, maybe the best running back in any given season moving forward. I wouldn't be that surprised if he led the NFL in rushing, if he was the best fantasy producer in the NFL. Jesse Bates, to me, is still the best free safety in football. Incredibly instinctive, still in his prime, incredible range. Chris Lindstrom, arguably the best guard in the NFL, according to PFF, for the last couple of years. So those are star players. Now, not exactly at the star positions, which is something, this is interesting. So we just talked about the Rams. They're a much better team than the Falcons. But the rosters, if you were to go player for player, talent for talent, it's fairly similar. First of all, the Rams have a much better quarterback. The Rams have a much better coach. The Falcons coach was literally an assistant for the head coach of the Rams, okay? And a replaceable assistant. The Rams brought in Shula, and he might even be better than Raheem Morris. So, the coach, the quarterback, Penix, Stafford, pretty big difference, right? Having Nakua, well, I guess you have Drake London. So, Drake London is elite. There's no doubt. They're in the same category, I would say. Very much could be one better than the other in any given year. I think that's debatable, right? I think they're different types of receivers, but they're both elite. So that's a bad example. But a better example would be Jared Verse versus Chris Lindstrom. Lindstrom might be considered a better player because Chris Lindstrom is the best guard or second best guard in the NFL. But Jared Verse is the 9th or 10th best edge rusher, but he's an edge rusher. Right now, here's where the Falcons get interesting. They have young guys at primary spots that could be good. Michael Penix at quarterback, James Pierce at defensive end, Jalen Walker at defensive end, although I don't think he'll be a starter. I think that Leonard Floyd will be the starter. So only Pierce, to me, will be starting based on the camp reports and all that sort of stuff. Walker, I think, will be more situational. But nonetheless, those are first-round picks. They want those guys to pan out. They need those guys. But essentially, the point is, right? Safety, running back, and guard is not as valuable as having an elite receiver, an elite defensive end. But what I like about the Falcons is they may have an elite safety, elite running back, elite guard, but they do have in the other primary positions some promising aspects, right? A.J. Terrell is very good. He's close to being elite. He's not quite there. He was actually the first guy I left off the elite corner position, okay? Drake London is as close to a star receiver as you can get that isn't a star receiver. James Pierce has elite potential, right? Even at linebacker, Caden Ellis is very good. They have a lot of the fundamental elements down pat. They have those guys. They also, though, have a lot of legitimate weaknesses, like secondary, just in general, outside of Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell. They're rather thin or unproven at multiple positions, including safety, nickel corner, especially. Linebacker 2 is a big, iffy question. D-tackle isn't as strong as it's been, and a little aging in David Onyemata as their best guy. Their edge rush is a huge question mark. Their right tackle now is a huge question mark, and that affects a top 10 offensive line moving outside the top 10, similarly to the Chargers, which overall affects the roster and how good the run game is and how good the pass game is, how good Penix is. So at number 15, the Falcons are tricky. They're interesting. I really like the way their roster is built, but at the same time, I feel like they need a lot of these guys to hit for them to really move into that top 10 status. Number 14, the Bears are at number 14. Not too surprised by where they rank here. This feels about right to me, actually, because they have a lot of younger guys that have potential. Colston Loveland at tight end could be an elite player. He could even be a star player, right? Luther Burden has some big-time potential at receiver. Caleb Williams still has some potential at quarterback, even if I'm not a huge fan. But the biggest thing about the Bears that I don't think, almost any other team has, I think maybe the Packers, but the Bears may be the only team that is not, in my opinion, starting a weak player at any position. You can go from defensive line to offensive line to tight end, wide receiver, to quarterback. Now, based on last year, you could evaluate Caleb as a weak player. Based on last year, you could evaluate certain players as weaker, but even it's a stretch. Are we expecting Caleb to be a bottom barrel quarterback? I wouldn't expect that, even if he was last year, And if your worst player is a generational quarterback, that's pretty fun, right? That's pretty good. I will say that. At the same time, though, I think Chicago's roster is weirdly overrated and underrated. So they're underrated in the element that they don't have any weaknesses. They don't have any player that I look at in a starting role and I'm like, yeah, that guy's not it. Like Javon Dexter, Grady Jarrett at D tackle, Montez Sweat, Odenigbo at D end. Not amazing, really. Sweat and Dexter, I like. Linebackers, Edmonds has crazy potential still, and in any given year can be very good. Edwards is very good, right? Jalen Johnson's elite. Their safeties are very solid, and they've got good depth. Swift is replaceable at running back, but he's not bad necessarily. He's not terrible. There are worse running backs than DeAndre Swift. So, they're underrated in terms of that, the quality of not having bad. But they're overrated in terms of elite talent. People talk about Rome Odunze like he's elite. He's not. DJ Moore like he's elite. He's not, right? There's players that they discuss at that level, like Caleb, already we're talking about Loveland like that. We've got to wait a second here, guys, right? Sweat, Montez Sweat, very good player. Is he elite? Nah, I wouldn't say so. Their elite players are Jalen Johnson. He's a top 10 corner. And Joe Thuney. He might be the best guard in the NFL. And he's aging, right? So it's that counterbalance of they're guys that people think are elite are actually good to very good, but they're not great. And there's also the element of the roster that's underrated where it's but they also don't have any players that are bad. So that's the interesting thing about talking about the Bears. At number 13, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers, now on the other hand to Chicago, a little bit more of a balancing beam type of roster. They have some really great players, but then they also have some really bad players. So, which side do you want to lean towards? So, unlike the Bears, the Steelers are a little bit more balanced in that regard. Now, one of the things that bothers me about the Steelers is their offense as a collective. I don't think there's a lot of talent on the offense. Now, there are highly publicized players. There are very popular players. There are even a lot of capital inside this offense, right? DK Metcalf, for example. Metcalf can be an elite receiver. There's no debate. I don't think anyone would argue that Metcalf has the physical capability at any given point being a top 10 receiver, and he has been in the past. I would say 1 year in his career in Seattle, I think it was his second season in the NFL, he was a top 10 receiver in the league. But since then, he's just a little too limited to be truly elite. He's very, very good. I mean, he's massive. He's very fast, right? And he's a number one receiver. But he's a number one receiver that also needs a complementary receiver, if that makes sense. And the Steelers don't have complementary receivers. Like, they're looking for the scrap heap waiver wire. They're hoping that Roman Wilson, their third-round pick from last year, can become something. They're hoping that the little man Calvin Austin can be the little man that can, right? They're hoping for those guys to step up. They brought in Jonnu Smith, who Jonnu Smith is excellent in his niche. He's an excellent after-the-catch playmaker. But other than that, a little bit like DK, right? Like, DK is, like, really good in the niche that he's in. Amazing. But they're not well-rounded at their position. Their running backs are a rookie or a kind of like third down change of pace guy that everyone likes but doesn't love. Their offensive line, they've got first-round picks. Left tackle, right? Right tackle, first-round picks. Good players in Sayamalu, right? Draft capital spent. Aaron Rodgers is a huge name. Aaron Rodgers isn't what he used to be, clearly, right? Some people would say he's a bum. I'd say he's solid. He could be good, but he also could be a bum. So that's why I kind of put him in that solid category. So he's kind of in the middle. He definitely needs the help. And what I hate about the Steelers is the offensive line, there's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of shakiness underneath. It's a thin ice for the offensive line, right? You know, DK and Jonnu with Arthur Smith, I could see how that really works, but I could also see how it's a disaster. You know, I could also see how they just can't separate at these positions. So the offense is bothering me. The defense is really awesome. There's not a lot of argument against the defense, right? I think the only argument is that they're a little old and that they're a little bit more name than substance in certain areas. Like Joey Porter Jr. is probably known better than he is because his name is Joey Porter Jr. Like Darius Slay is not Darius Slay from 5 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Jalen Ramsey isn't Jalen Ramsey from 5 years ago. Even arguably TJ Watt isn't TJ Watt from 3 years ago. And Cam Hayward, still Cam Hayward. But, you know, like Watt and Hayward are their stars. But even they are like 30 plus. You know what I'm saying? Like, so some of the guys that could really develop though, Frazier at center had a really promising rookie year. Peyton Wilson at linebacker is a big one to watch. Patrick Queen could be better this year than last year. Alex Highsmith's a very good player. Deshaun Elliott could continue to be on the right track of being a legitimate top 15 safety. I have him around the top 20. Fontenot is one to watch. I really liked him coming out of college. He could be maybe their best offensive lineman at his peak. He could be the guy that rises into very good baller sort of elite category. But yeah, an interesting roster where they have some weaknesses on the O-line, the secondary, the receiving core, but they have a lot of strength in the front seven. They have a lot of strength now at corner, and they have a lot of potential in terms of Metcalf, Jonnu, some of the new elements, Jalen Ramsey, Darius Slay of the team. So number 13, Pittsburgh. Number 12, the Indianapolis Colts, which might be slightly surprising. But honestly, when I got done ranking them, I wasn't that surprised how highly they ranked because I kind of talk about the Colts in this capacity. I talk about the Colts as being a roster that is pretty damn strong. And if they had a quarterback, they'd probably be a playoff team. They might even be the best team in their division if they had a quarterback. But they don't. They have Daniel Jones. And if not Daniel Jones, they have Anthony Richardson. Probably both of them will play some games this year. That's the way I feel about it. This is an example of a roster that's talented, but also I would say I think they've improved in terms of like balancing their roster. In terms of like, they used to be a roster where they were best in areas that didn't really like matter as much. Linebacker, guard, running back, for example. Like a couple of years ago, that was like their truly elite players. Linebackers, running backs, and guards. You know, guys that you can find in the third round. And that's where everyone was like, oh my goodness, Chris Ballard's the best GM in football. But it's like the guy can't, you know, he can't get a receiver. He can't get a quarterback, and he can't get a cornerback. So how good, and even an edge rusher was a bit iffy. So it's like, how good is this guy as a GM if his best picks are at linebacker and, you know, running back? You know what I'm saying? But now it's a little bit more balanced where it's like, well, the receiving core is good. They might not have like a superstar, but Michael Pittman's a good receiver. And Josh Downs, I think, is a really good player that's going to really have a breakout year. And I think Mitchell has talent, and I think Pierce has talent, and I think Ty Warren is a dog, and I think that's going to be a good pick. And the O-line is maybe not as thoroughly strong and a little bit more questionable with some new starters that are unproven than in years past, but they still got at least 3 awesome players, including their best player, Quentin Nelson, who is their lone star player. Jonathan Taylor being close in any given year, DeForest Buckner being close in any given year, but they're elite to me, not stars. Warren could become a star. I wouldn't be surprised by that, right? And can Latu be an elite guy? That's a guy that they're looking forward to. Some of their best players are a little older too, like Buckner and Stewart. That's a little concerning. Ward, that's a little concerning. But trying to cover up some weaknesses. I think Cross is an underrated guy. I don't think Franklin gets enough love. Moore is another one of their better players that's a bit older on defense, but very well-rounded. Offensively, defensively, they both categories, both units have talent across the roster and some decent depth across the roster. It's just that they do not have a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback, and they have maybe small concerns. But other than that, that's what it comes down to. If they had a quarterback, they're probably a playoff team. I mean, they're the 12th best roster in football. 11, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are an example of a team that have, just like I said with Chicago, and my guess was correct, the Green Bay Packers do not have a single bum that starts for them. They don't have a single guy that I'm like, that guy sucks. Get him off the field. I don't want to see him playing. They don't have one guy like that. Even their corner position, which people would say, Mitch, corner. They're actually not as bad as you think. They're just not great. They don't have a number 1. That's their problem. They have a bunch of 2s or 3s at corner, but they're still not terrible players. Keyshawn Nixon isn't terrible. He's just not great. Nate Hobbs, he's good. He's okay. He's not great. Everywhere else, I mean, how many first-round picks have they spent at linebacker and at defensive line, D-tackle, D-end, right? Their O-line is good across the board. Nobody's bad. You can't really say anybody is weak. Their problem with their receiving core is that they don't have a great player, but they've got a bunch of good players. That is the Packers. They're good, but they're not great. And the problem with the Packers is we're waiting until the end of time. Can somebody be great? Somebody, right? The guy that's actually great, and the funny thing is the Packers need to be doing this more. The guys that are great on their team are the guys that they sign. McKinney, great, elite. Josh Jacobs, great, elite. They got a little lucky with a Zach Tom at tackle, right? They have Elton Jenkins, who's a top 3, top 4 center. Sure. They got a little lucky. That's their O-line, right? But we're waiting. Jordan Love, you've got some flash. You've got some promise. Can you be great? Christian Watson or Jaden Reed or Matthew Golden now. Goes down the list. Can you be great? We drafted you. Can you be great? Rashawn Gary has been great at times. Kenny Clark has been great at times, but I feel like they're coming off somewhat down years. Tucker Kraft is a really interesting one where he could maybe be a top 5 tight end in football, and I wouldn't be that surprised. He's certainly great after the catch. He certainly is now hitting his peak. Edgerrin Cooper could be really good. But here's the thing, right? Edgerrin Cooper plays linebacker. Kenny Clark plays D tackle. I guess that's a little bit more valuable, right? Kraft plays tight end. I'd prefer that to be wide receiver. I'd prefer that to be corner. I'd prefer that to be D end. I'd prefer that to be quarterback, right? So they have some guys like Reed, Kraft, Cooper, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Lucas Van Ness. These guys could be really, really good, but they're not yet. If they are, It's a contender. It's a contender. But we've been waiting. We're waiting. We're patiently waiting, Packers. So that's what it is with the Packers, man. That's what it is. Number 10, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're entering the top 10, finally. The top 10. Tampa Bay is at number 10. Tampa Bay, I really like how their roster is constructed. I have very little issue with the Buccaneers. I feel like I would want them to maybe have an absolute outrageous pass rusher or an absolute stud corner. I think the flaw with their roster is that they do not have either of those positions where they have one incredible player. And I think that's the flaw with their defense, to be honest, is their passing game defense doesn't have one of the key elements of being elite at one of those categories. And that's, to me, the element of the team that's a flaw. But their offense is as good as any in the NFL, right? They have, in my opinion, the best left tackle in the NFL, who is their lone star player, Tristan Wirfs. You can make an argument that Mike Evans is a star player, but he's like my 7th, 6th, 8th best receiver in the NFL, and he's getting older. So for me to say he's a 10 out of 10, the same level as Jamar Chase, I think that's a little much, considering his production is usually top 10, but not usually top 3. So Mike Evans is elite, Hall of Famer, but he's past his prime. You know, Levante David, very, very good, past his prime though. Winfield, one of those guys that you could argue, like last year, he would have been listed as a star, but he didn't play well this past year or play as much or be as consistent because he was injured. So Winfield is one of those guys where, like, yeah, he could be a top 3 safety again, and I wouldn't be that surprised. Vita Vea, if you were to niche it down to nose tackle, maybe you could include him as a star player. But as a pure defensive tackle, he's somewhere in the top 10, top 12, top 8, but not quite like a true game changer in that way, in my opinion. You know, Baker was close to being elite, but I need to see like the consistency from Baker. So Baker was just cut off from the elite. I had 3 quarterbacks in the elite: Herbert, Daniels, and Stafford. And Baker was just outside along with Jalen Hurts as a very good quarterback. But I think what hurt me with Baker was the turnovers. That's kind of what I was like, eh. And then I want to see, you know, continuing without Liam Cohen, all this sort of stuff. The interesting element about the Bucs as well is the Chris Godwin evaluation. Do you include Chris Godwin? Do you not include Chris Godwin? Because I included Overshown and some others, I decided to include Chris Godwin, which obviously gives them a boost of a very good receiver when healthy. Now, Emeka Egbuka could be somebody that, as a rookie, their first-round pick, he could instantly be an impactful player. He could instantly be a very good player. He could instantly take over for Godwin. And even if Godwin, you know, kind of regresses, they could kind of swap positions on the chart, so to speak. And then what I also like about the Bucs is they don't have a ton of weaknesses. They don't have, like, again, like a great corner or a great pass rusher, but Yaya Diaby is very, very good. And, you know, Jamel Dean and McCollum are pretty good. And the offensive line, maybe they're a little weak at the guard position with one of their starters, and maybe a little weak at linebacker outside of Levante David. But it's not too bad. Like, a lot of these other elite teams have similar issues. Like, it's not a huge deal to me. So, yeah, Tampa Bay, very, very good team. Bucky Irving, also a guy just to mention. The running back position is very deep, very good, very well-rounded. They have 3 legitimate running backs. I think Bucky Irving is close to being elite. I think he needs one more year of truly elite production for me to maybe put him into that category. But number 10, Tampa Bay. At number 9, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills. A contender that isn't exactly a truly elite special roster. An example of a team that is terrifying, that truly doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, but has an absolute incredible, most valuable player at the heart of their success. Josh Allen is the Buffalo Bills, and you can't say this about Lamar Jackson. You can't say this about Joe Burrow. You can't say this about Patrick Mahomes. You cannot say this about any of the other elite quarterbacks. The only star player on his team is him, Josh Allen. Other than that, Buffalo has some really good players, even elite players. Christian Benford at corner, top 10 corner in the NFL. Deion Dawkins, top 5, top 7 left tackle in the NFL. I think that's pretty fair. Not the best receiver in the league. Not the best D tackle in the league. Not the best or second best running back or best safety or best linebacker. If you followed that, you understand where I'm going. So the Buffalo Bills are a well-constructed roster in terms of we have a special player. Let's make sure we have no real weaknesses, but let's also understand that because we have Josh Allen, we also don't need to have and overpay certain players. We don't need an amazing number one receiver because we have Josh Allen. It's kind of like how the Patriots treated Tom Brady. It's like, we'll give you a really good one. We'll give you a Troy Brown. We'll give you a Deion Branch. We'll give you a Julian Edelman, a Wes Welker, but we won't give you Terrell Owens. We'll give you 1 year of Randy Moss for 2 years, but that's about it, right? We'll luck into Rob Gronkowski in the second round, but that's about it, right? Like, so the Bills are sort of in that way, kind of like the Patriots build, where it's like, we've got a lot of underappreciated football players. We've got a lot of guys that outside of Buffalo, these guys are not known as household names. Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Matt Milano, Spencer Brown, Teron Johnson, even James Cook maybe is, but like he's not an elite running back. He's not Saquon. He's not Derrick Henry. People aren't wearing James Cook's jerseys in, Pittsburgh. They might be wearing a Saquon jersey. You know what I'm saying? Like they aren't players that are generational. They're not all pros. They're very good players. They're maybe even Pro Bowlers. And you can win a Super Bowl like that. You can. But the thing is, you need to have a very well-rounded team. You need to be able to be good in all elements, right? Like, you need to be good against the run, good as a pass rushing team, good in coverage, good running the ball, good in special teams, right? Like, you need to have good receivers, but not great. You don't have to have great, but like good offensive line. Buffalo sort of does have all those things. They do have maybe a couple concerns where the safety position, I would think, is the biggest weakness on the roster, right? That's probably like the biggest weakness on the roster. But otherwise, I mean, the receiving core, they have a bunch of guys that can get it done. I think Khalil Shakir is kind of underrated. I'd even make an argument that Keon Coleman could jump into becoming a top 32 receiver in football this year. That might be the breakout player. Dalton Kincaid, they're kind of waiting for that at tight end too. Can he become a top 8 tight end? Top 7 tight end? Not asking for Travis Kelce in his prime, but can he be good? Right? Could he be like a Mark Andrews? Right? Could he be like that type of guy, right? And they're also counting on, guys like Matt Milano returning to prominence, Joey Bosa returning to prominence. If they can get them back towards their prime, then that would really catapult this team to the Super Bowl, or like a Super Bowl type of winner, type of team. But they're very good on the offensive line. I think they play better as a sum of their parts than they do as individuals. I think their defensive line typically plays better as a unit than they do as individuals, right? I think their defense as a whole usually plays better than the individuals. Like, they're just more of that. They're well coached on defense. They're well coordinated, well schemed. Their offense is elite, but a lot of it comes down to having Josh Allen, having balance, and having a plethora of targets rather than just a couple superstars. You know what I'm saying? Josh Palmer might be a guy that could really help them. So, yeah, like, that's the Bills. And I don't think this is too surprising by this evaluation. I think most NFL fans would say the same thing. So, Buffalo is at number 9. Good roster, but not elite, right? At number 8, San Francisco. And San Francisco was actually initially number 6, but they're very close to the Vikings and the Texans, who are my 6 and 7. Wait for more. But the difference is that the 49ers have multiple players that I evaluated where they won't be playing at the start of the year. So I basically moved them down a couple spots to give it a more realistic feel to the team at the beginning of the season. Although I would even argue that the Niners will be, like, at the beginning of the year, like week 1, the Niners probably have like the 15th best roster in the league. By the end of the year, I think this is a more correct evaluation when they have Mustafa and they have Brandon Ayuk and some of these rookies have truly developed. Another thing about the Niners that was really funky is they have the most starters that are rookies. So based on the evaluation, some of them will be very good. Some of them might not be as good. So trying to middle that in their roster is also difficult. And they had one of the most star-filled teams. I think they might have had the most. Them, Philadelphia, maybe Baltimore. There was a couple teams that San Francisco was alongside. But weirdly enough, the Niners had 5 stars, but 0 elite players. So they had stars, like absolute superstars. And then guys that they didn't really have a guy that's like almost a star. I guess Brandon Ayuk has been that before, and maybe Dominic Pooney or maybe even Brock Purdy could be that, but not quite to me. They're not quite there. So their stars are Christian McCaffrey, who at his best and when healthy even, not even just at his best, but like when he's actually playing, he's easily a top 5 running back in football. He's probably the most well-rounded receiving running threat in football, the most versatile all-around running back, blocking, catching, running. He is a chess piece, and he's also fundamental to their success on offense because he's a man-beater in the pass game. He's an explosive and effective and efficient runner in the running game, and he's also a great red zone player. So he makes them better in all elements of their offense. George Kittle is the best tight end in the NFL as a well-rounded player and producer at the position. Vertical threat in the passing game, yak threat in the passing game, great blocker. Trent Williams, top 5 left tackle, still, if not still top 3. Fred Warner, right? Best linebacker in the NFL, no discussion needed, Hall of Famer. Nick Bosa, who all of these guys are probably Hall of Famers. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Defensive Player of the Year before, a couple years ago, right? Can lead the NFL in sacks in any given year. I have him as the 4th best edge rusher in the league. So those are the 5-star players. 2 on defense, 3 on offense. They have Brock Purdy at quarterback, who I have as a very good quarterback. He's not quite great, but he is very good, especially in this system. Brandon Ayuk, when he returns, he's been a top 10 receiver in my mind in 2023. 2024, he got hurt. He had the whole holdout. Wasn't very good. Trying to middle that overall with the injury return. But I think once he comes back, unlike Chris Godwin, I think he'll be closer to himself because it's a pretty clean injury and he's younger. Also, Dominic Pooney is a guy that's ascending at the guard position. Lenore is one of the most underrated corners in football. The rookies are really interesting to discuss. All of them look promising, especially Mykel Williams at the defensive end position, who's their 1st-round pick. He is, to me, their next Eric Armstead. Inside, outside versatility on the defensive line. Siegel, their young safety, who they drafted in the 4th or the 5th. I don't know. But like later in the draft, he's been great in the preseason. Upton Stout. Everybody is just absolutely going crazy about Upton Stout. I mean, you would think this guy's Charles Woodson at nickel corner. Alfred Collins and CJ West, they need to play big roles as run stuffers on the inside of their defensive tackle position. Given their roles, I don't think it's too far off to suggest that they can be that because they're not being asked to be pass rushers, right? Even a guy like Bryce Huff is not, included here, but Bryce Huff is a good football player who's a good rotation piece at the very least. Ricky Pearsall is the one guy to pay attention to. I list him as a good receiver, which for some might be a projection, but for me, that might be a little bit underwhelming. Like, I think this guy could actually be top 20 in receiver production this year. Jawan Jennings was very good last year. I only listed him as good, though, this past season. Renardo Green is another guy I'm expecting to really have a great season at corner. And surprisingly, the Niners don't have a lot of bad starters. And I think that's because they have a lot of rookies. Some of those rookies could suck. There's no doubt about it. But if they all pan out and they have a Ram-like draft from last year, this could become one of the most, best rosters in the NFL again. Like, easily, if these guys really do pan out. But their lone weaknesses are on the offensive line. Barch, mostly because he's unproven. And then Brendel, because he is legitimately probably their worst player as a starter. But, if the Niners can withstand some early season injuries and get some of their guys back, I think they have legitimate argument that they've improved at safety, that I think they're going to be a better defensive line and maybe even a better front seven, especially when you combine it with coaching. And they should just be healthier on offense. So I expect big things from this team. They were a weird one to evaluate because they've had a very elite roster in the past, and they're replacing a lot of those guys with a lot of youth, which is kind of tough to evaluate in this setting. At number 7, the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are number 7. Not too surprised by them ranking in the top 10. They do have, some weaknesses in the secondary. Their corner position is a little weak. I think their safety position is just okay. But otherwise, there isn't a lot that I don't love about this team. I think they have an excellent defensive front, especially the edge position. Van Ginkel, Grenard. I think Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, especially Jonathan Allen, will give them good at defensive tackle. Linebackers are good and maybe the most underrated area of their team as a depth and just as a starting unit. Blake Cashman, I think, is their most underrated player. The offensive line across the board is really good, especially their tackles. I think they have 2 legitimate elite or very good players in Darisaw and O'Neal. Justin Jefferson is their only star, which is why I think they're only 7. If this team had another star player, like top 3, top 5 player at their position, they would probably be a top 5 roster in the NFL. But that's what holds them back. They rather have a lot of very good players, but they don't have a lot of stars. Their only gravitational pull is Justin Jefferson. Other than that, Darisaw is pretty close, but not exactly. Jonathan Grenard is more like the 10th, 11th, 12th best edge rusher rather than the 4th or 5th. But they have a lot of good. Byron Murphy is a good nickel corner, right? Very good, right? Hawkinson, very good tight end, but he's not McBride. You know what I'm saying? Pace and Allen and Kelly and, a couple of the pickups they made this offseason. Good stuff, right? Like Addison, I'd say he's a good receiver. He's somewhere between 33 and 45, probably closer to 33, but he's not 20, in the NFL. Aaron Jones, still a good running back, but not Aaron Jones from like 4 years ago. So this team has a lot of good players. And I think that's really where people get obsessed about the roster, because it's like you look across the roster, it's like that guy's above average, that guy's above average, that guy's above average, that guy's above average. But when evaluating and correlating this to a rankings, that's why they're number 7, but not number 3, right? So that's why I have them at number 7. Number 6 is the Houston Texans, who have certainly more stars than the Vikings, but a couple more weaknesses, specifically just one unit. The offensive line literally has all of their weaknesses. Center, guard, guard. Their entire interior offensive line is their weakness. Other than that, I've said it once, I'll say it again. If the Texans had an offensive line, they might be the most talented team in the NFL. And this is not even really considering that they don't even have Tank Dell, right? Like Tank Dell is not even on their team, right? And Tank Dell was probably a top 32 receiver in the NFL. So that's pretty crazy. You could argue that I should remove Joe Mixon. And if you want to do that, that's fine. I didn't do that for this exercise because I think he will play at some point during the year. But their defense is loaded. They have 3 stars, in my opinion, 2 on defense. Will Anderson, Derek Stingley. Those are their star defenders. Okay. 10 out of 10s. Will Anderson, he's in that elite group of pass rushers. He was actually the last guy that I included. And Derek Stingley, my number 2 corner, easily included. Nico Collins, my number 3 receiver in the NFL. I've already projected he'll lead the NFL in receiving yards this year. I think he's the best player in the NFL that casual fans don't really know is as good as he is. People know who he is, but they don't really know how good he is. Like, Nico Collins should be talked about like A.J. Brown, but he's not for some reason. I don't know why, but he's not, okay? Maybe this year he will be. Danielle Hunter, top 10 edge rusher, just outside the star category. Elite, though. Definitely elite, no question about it. It's been top, 10 in sacks for like his entire career, right? CJ Stroud could certainly get back to being elite, and he was decently close, right? Like I have Stroud around the 9th, 10th, 11th best quarterback, but he's closer right now to Purdy than he is to Jaden Daniels, I would say, okay? Or Matthew Stafford. But he could get back there because I love Stroud. And some guys that I think are generally underrated that are very good football players. Kamari Lassiter at corner, Jalen Petrie at nickel, CJ Gardner-Johnson coming from Philly was a nice pickup, Al-Shaair at linebacker, of course, Joe Mixon. They have some rookies that I think are very promising, including their left tackle, Ursary, who I loved in the draft, Higgins, who will play big snaps at receiver. I like those are solid rookies to start in the NFL. Bullock is a riser at safety. Christian Kirk could be that reliable veteran that takes over for Tank Dell. And if he can stay healthy, maybe they have a little bit more of a receiving core this year. Because last year, remember, they were really counting on guys like John Mechie, Hutchinson, right? Like, that's not ideal. Hopefully Higgins, Knoll, and Kirk give them more than what they had last year at that position. And then otherwise, defensively, they don't really have any weaknesses. D-tackle is their weakest position, but Settle and Rankins aren't bad. They're not bad. And the thing I like about their defense, too, is even in positions where they're not amazing, like linebacker is a good position for them, but it's mostly because they have great depth, right? Like, they're not Fred Warners, but they're none of them are bad, So Dalton Schultz is certainly serviceable, if not at times good at tight end. So yeah, the Texans, they have a good mix of like depth, stars, and stars in the right places. That's what I love about the Texans. And it took me terribly long to get to this point. Nico Collins, Derek Stingley, Will Anderson, CJ Stroud, Danielle Hunter, Kamari Lassiter, they all play in the most important positions that you possibly could play in. Now, if Ursary gets there, all of a sudden, even Joe Mixon, right? Like running back, like even if they do, like, man, like this team is just built the right way by Nick Caserio. Number 5 on the list is the Kansas City Chiefs. Some people are probably a little surprised to see the Chiefs this high, but I always know the Chiefs are going to rank this high because the Chiefs have stars. Like people just like, I don't know why, but it feels like people treat the Chiefs as if they're the Bills. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, they just have Patrick Mahomes and they don't have any other great Hall of Fame players. No, that's wrong. They literally have Chris Jones, And for years, they had Travis Kelce and they had Tyreek Hill. Like, these are legitimately, arguably the best players at their position. Chris Jones has been the best player at his position since Aaron Donald said, see ya. Like, literally. And even before that, like, they legitimately have the best center in the league. They had maybe the best guard in the league. He's gone. So really, they lost a star player in Joe Thuney. They lost a star player. They lost a very good player, a baller, Justin Reed. They've actually lost players, right? Like Rashee Rice, maybe you get him back in the lineup after a 6-week suspension. I think he's very good. And I think he'll have a great year when he plays, right? But the thing about the Chiefs is so weird. It's like, there's been times where they've had the best corner in the league, the best D-tackle in the league, the best guard in the league, the best center in the league, the best tight end in the league, the best receiver in the league, like maybe even the best safety, like Tyrann Mathieu. Like, this isn't just Patrick Mahomes, you know what I mean? Like, Trent McDuffie might be the best nickel in the league. He might be the only nickel, I think there's maybe one other, that I included as a star player. So, like, people got to stop the mumbo jumbo. Oh, he got no receivers. They were all hurt. Bro, Hollywood Brown is good. He had 1,000 yards before he even showed up at Kansas City. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are just, like, wild, man. Josh Simmons could be a stud. Watch, he'll be a star left tackle. They haven't had one of those before. Actually, I think they might have. No, they had a star right tackle. Mitchell Schwartz was really good at one point. But, like, you guys understand what I'm saying, right? Like, they've legitimately had the best players at these positions. It's not just one or two guys. It's not just Mahomes and Kelce, even though that's the way the media makes it seem. The NFL media, the NFL analysts. No, bro, it's not just a bunch of bums. It's legitimately like the best players in the league with the best coach in the league on the same team. Now, I will say that typically they do have sort of a top-heavy roster, right? Like they typically have guys where Spags has to scheme around Mike Pennell at the D-tackle, or Mike Dana, or Charles Omenihu, or like some of these safeties that they have. And this year, they have a weakness at left guard. They have some interesting safety position concerns. They have some concerns on the defensive line outside of Chris Jones and George Karlaftis. But that's nothing too unfamiliar for this team. Even some of the highlights the guys that I think are really good, Worthy could have a great year this year. Right, he's the fastest guy in the NFL. Even if he's not the best receiver, he's the fastest, or the second. Jamison Williams, Tyreek Hill. Jalen Watson is really underrated. Leo Chanel, really underrated. Some guys that I just want to shout out. Before we get to number 4, my number 4 is the Denver Broncos. The AFC West has a new top dog, baby, and it's a horse. It's the Denver Broncos. But I have the Broncos. This is an example of a team versus a roster. So the Broncos have one weak player that starts for them, and it's their number 3 receiver, whether it be Marvin Mims or Troy Franklin. Okay? Otherwise, the Broncos have 10 players that are star, elite, or very good baller players. They have 2 stars. The Defensive Player of the Year, Pat Surtain, and a top 3 guard in Quinn Miners. Okay? They have elites, Garrett Bowles at left tackle, Zach Allen at D tackle, and Nick Bonito, who looks like, I knew he was absurd last year. I've watched a little bit of the preseason of the Broncos. He might be even better this year. That guy looks sick. That guy might lead the NFL in sacks. And then ballers are interesting for them because Greenlaw is a huge X factor. Like, can the guy stay on the field? Like, Greenlaw can be elite, right? But he could also be a non-factor because he could be hurt, right? It's an Achilles injury, nothing to take lightly. John Franklin Myers, awesome addition to them last year. It's a stupid trade by the Jets. Courtland Sutton is a baller. No questions asked. Jonathan Cooper's underrated, and Brandon Jones is very underrated too. They also have a really good rookie class. Barron at nickel corner, immediate starter. Harvey at running back, immediate playmaker. And Pat Bryant. They traded Vele for a reason. They really like Pat Bryant at that slot position. Otherwise, man, they've got a bunch of good players. Powers at guard, who's underrated. Evan Ingram, that increases their tight end position a bit. Mike McGlinchey was a really good signing for them a couple years ago. He's been better in Denver than San Francisco. Hufanga, another Niner, turned Bronco. And then Bo Nix is a good quarterback. I wouldn't call him great. I wouldn't call him elite. Here's the thing. The Broncos versus the Chiefs, right? I think it comes down to, ultimately, quarterback. I think that's the difference. I think Mahomes is Mahomes, and Bo Nix is good. I think the Broncos as a team are better than the Chiefs as a roster. It's not outrageously so. It's enough to be made up by the difference between an elite quarterback or a special Hall of Fame quarterback and just like a good starter. That's the difference between the teams. But the rosters, Denver has a absurd defense. Their defense doesn't really have any weaknesses. I don't have a single weakness on their defense. Not one. So, number 4, Denver. Number 3, the Detroit Lions. And by the way, guys, it was like, so 7-6, there was a little gap, Chiefs, little gap, Broncos, big gap, Lions, and then big gap, Eagles, Ravens. Okay? Just throwing that out there. Lions have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Almost half of the Lions starters are ballers, elite, or stars. They're stars. Jahmyr Gibbs, Penei Sewell. Both will be top 22 in my top 100. Just throwing that out there. Coming soon. Elites. Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson was very close to being a star. If not a star, right? I might actually have to include him as a star. Because I remember I did put Will Anderson as a star, so that's just a mental error. Not that it changes their ranking, but so 3 stars technically. Gibbs, Sewell, and Hutchinson. Okay? Ballers. Jamison Williams could be a star. He could be elite. He is absurdly talented, right? Jack Campbell could be elite soon at linebacker. Otherwise, though, just some good players. McNeil, Goff, DJ Reed at corner, and Decker at left tackle. They do have a couple weaknesses on the offensive and defensive line. Mahogany is a little bit of a question mark. Davenport, their second edge rusher, bit of a question mark. The depth of the D-tackle position early in the year will be tested. McNeil is one of those players like Godwin, Ayuk, Mustafa, etc. That won't be there early, but will be there late, so I included him on the list. Take that for what it's worth. I think Tate Ratledge will be solid for them, especially in their system. Physicality, good athlete. Alex Anzalone, underrated player. Can DJ Reader step up with McNeil out? Terrion Arnold, can he take a step at corner? And then, the receiver position is interesting because Tesla's looked really good. Tim Patrick is capable. They have seemingly more depth there. But the overall question about the Lions is all these players are awesome. They have 13 out of 22 players that are very good, if not better. With the coaching removed, do some of these players get worse? St. Brown, Decker, Laporta. Do they get worse? Or do they stay the same? Jared Goff, right? But to me, securely, firmly the third best roster, the Lions. At number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. No longer number 1, but still absolutely filthy is Philadelphia. Now, they did lose some big-time ballers, right? You go through the list. Darius Slay, good corner. Milton Williams, a baller D tackle. Josh Sweat, a baller D end. Right? CJ Gardner-Johnson, a baller safety. These are the legitimate rankings. They lost those guys. Mekhi Becton, a solid to good guard. Those are some big losses. Those are some big losses. And they replaced them, at least at multiple positions. They get worse in multiple positions or with rookies. So they got worse at about 3 or 4 positions. Still, though, they have 4 star players. Saquon, the best running back in football. Lane Johnson, the best right tackle in football. A.J. Brown, a top 4 receiver. And Jalen Carter, right, at defensive tackle. Top 4 D tackle. Jordan Mailata, very close. You could argue Jordan Mailata, he was the first guy I cut off at tackle. So that's up to your opinion, and I'll leave that up to you. The Eagles, I'll just throw this out there, were 1 point shy of my first place. They were literally 1 point separated from first place, which I think it's obvious who's in first at this point. Zach Bond, there was only one linebacker that I included as a star, which was Fred Warner. I think that's fair, though, because Zach Bond's only been great for 1 year, so it's hard to put him as a star player. Cooper DeJean at elite is a little stretch, so that kind of maybe makes up for Jordan Mailata, but at the nickel position specifically, he is top 3 or 4, so that's why he's in the elite. Landon Dickerson, very good guard, Pro Bowl level. Quinyon Mitchell, my 10th or 9th best corner, so he is at the elite position as well. But you look at the Eagles, right? That's 14, 13 players, baller or better, of their starters. Multiple rookies, including a first-round pick, Jahad Campbell, who could also be a stud, a baller, right? Jordan Davis is a guy that still ascending. Blankenship's a good player. Juergens, a good player. Very few weaknesses. And their weaknesses are in very, replaceable positions. Defensive end, where that's an important position, but Hunt is young. We haven't seen much from him yet. What can he be? What can he become? What can he be under the tutelage of Fangio? And it's a rotation, right? It's a rotation. You've got third receiver, which they barely use anyways, and then guard, where it's he's the weakest of a good group. As long as he's not terrible, then they should be okay, right? That's kind of the deal with the Eagles, but everyone knows how good this team is. I don't really have to go crazy. I think one of the things is people might argue Jalen Hurts should be elite. Jalen Hurts was in the category with Baker Mayfield and C.J. Stroud and Jared Goff and Brock Purdy. Those were the guys that were in the baller category, not quite elite. I had that reserved for Daniels, Herbert, and Stafford. So that's just my opinion, though. People might disagree with that. Nolan Smith, I think he ascends this year big time. I think that Goddard is somewhat on his downward slope, but he's still a very good tight end. And Devontae Smith, he might be elite, but we might never know, because he'll never get the opportunity to really be that as a number 2 receiver on a low volume passing attack. So Eagles are still sick. There's no questions asked. That's why they're at number 2. But my number 1 roster is the Baltimore Ravens. And now it can firmly be said that the Baltimore Ravens have absolutely zero excuses to not win the Super Bowl. I mean, this team has 4 star players, 5 elite players, and 3 ballers. That's 12 players that are baller or better. That is 9 players that are elite. 9 elite players. Lamar, Henry, Hamilton, and Humphrey are stars. Top 3 quarterback, top 3 running back, best safety in football, second best nickel corner in my opinion. Elites. Matabike is a top 15 D tackle, top 12. Roquan, third or second best linebacker. Jair at perimeter corner, top 10 corner. Tyler Linderbaum, second best center in football. And Mark Andrews, top 5, top 6 tight end. They also have guys like Nate Wiggins and Zay Flowers, who I feel could be elite players. Zay needs to take one more step, and Wiggins does need to take a leap, but I think it's very possible, right? Very, very possible. Malachi Starks, a first-round pick safety, could also potentially be a baller. And then they just have a bunch of solids. You know, Owe is a good pass rusher. Travis Jones, a good D tackle, underrated. Their receivers, I feel like, are solid. Bateman could actually be good. DeAndre Hopkins is just fine at this point, but like he's decent as a third player on an offense that doesn't really feature the third receiver too much. You could even maybe switch him with Isaiah Likely if you want to go 12 personnel, and that might bump the grade up a little bit. But I never did that. I did 11 personnel for every team. Ronnie Stanley, you could argue at times he's very good, but I just put him as a good because of the injury concerns. Their only real concerns are number 2 linebacker and maybe like guard to a certain degree is just iffy. It's just fine. But in their system of run heavy downhill and with Lamar eluding and avoiding and elusiveness, they're fine. So maybe right tackle. Rosengarten was okay, though, as a rookie. You would only expect better. I mean, their O-line, I guess, is the unit where it's like individually, they're not as good as they play as a team or a unit, the O-line. The pass rush, though, I think actually has a lot of potential this year, especially if Mike Green becomes a starter and becomes a star, which is possible. I think he could very easily be a very good defensive end, kind of like a Chop Robinson was last year for the Dolphins. But yeah, the Ravens, to me, best roster in the league, best secondary in the league, elite quarterback, elite running back, very good tight ends, very good receiver. They really don't have any position on their team where they don't have a very good player or better. Pass rush, run defense, linebacker, safety, corner, receiver, running back, tight end, offensive line, quarterback. The only one is offensive line. Oh, no, actually, no, Tyler Linderbaum. But, and then maybe Ronnie Stanley. So I don't know. This team's ridiculous. It's the Ravens at number 1 for me. There it is, guys. My roster rankings for 2025. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, Gronk, spike the like button. Don't be a jabroni and subscribe. Thank you for watching the entire thing. It means a lot. Also, go subscribe to Money Mitch. Peace.